What's up, everybody? Thank you for listening to The Knowledge Spot. For today's blog, we're going to try something a little different. I'm going to use my friend Jamie's advice and do a video blog instead. And what I want to talk to you guys about today is how I deal with writer's block. The main ways I deal with writer's block is that I have three strategies. The first one being don't procrastinate. The second one being just write. And the third one being rereading and rewriting. Sounds very simple, right? But what I'm going to do is I'm going to break these down a little more, show you how they can actually be extremely technical and intricate, and prove to you guys that these strategies are extremely effective. Alright guys, so the first strategy I talked about was procrastination. Don't procrastinate. It sounds like common sense to a lot of people. The major issues that come with procrastination when it comes to writing specifically is that the less amount of time you give yourself to work on something, the more often you're going to encounter writer's block. If we really want to delve into what writer's block is, you'll see that it's really an inability to write what's on your mind in a certain time frame. So for a lot of people, writer's block disappears. The bigger the space you give yourself, the least amount of writer's block you're going to encounter. If you are working with a space this big, let's say half of it's writer's block, and it's going to happen no matter what. Obviously, if you give yourself this much space and only this half of it's writer's block, you got a lot more space to actually work in and do something productive. So by procrastinating, you're not necessarily lengthening the amount of time that you'll spend under the influence of writer's block, but what you're doing is you're decreasing the amount of time you have in general, and thus, if we look at writer's block again as something that's going to happen no matter what, if it happens in this frame and it's taking up this much time, relatively speaking, that's actually a lot more time than if we're working in a frame like this. Again, relative to the amount of work you're trying to accomplish. So just to clarify my point a little more for you guys, I'm going to give you a real world example that I've been dealing with personally right now, actually. Earlier this school year, I was chosen to work on an undergraduate thesis. That means there is a lot of writing to do. And, I've experienced a fair share of writer's block while I'm doing it. But because I didn't procrastinate, so to give you guys some perspective, I've been working on this thesis for the past, let's say 3 days now. Past 3 days. It was a night and 2 days. It's not even due until next Saturday. Today's Friday. So over a week till it's due. I'm already, I would say, 70% done it. So, like I said, I gave myself this much time, and no matter what, it's impossible. We're all human. This much of my time has become filled with writer's block. Still, because I've got this much time left, I'm accomplishing things at a really good rate, and I have zero stress going into this thing. When I say zero stress, obviously I'm a little stressed out. It's a freaking thesis, and I want to do well on it. But writer's block doesn't bug me because I know the more amount of time I give myself, the least likely writer's block is actually to be a serious problem. So that's my first tip, guys. Just don't procrastinate. It's going to help big time with that kind of thing. Alright guys, so the first strategy was don't procrastinate. That'll help you deal with writer's block. The second major thing I've learned, and I want to give a big shout out to Steve Pressfield for this. He wrote a book. It was called The War of Art. I keep mixing it up with The Art of War. Clever wordplay there, Steve. But yeah, The War of Art. I'm hoping to have him on the podcast. I'm speaking to his people right now. Let's see what happens. He's a busy man. But what he did in that book was he described I don't want to say the theory, it was a belief that they had in ancient Rome that the creative process revolved around the idea of these muses. And I might be butchering this idea here, but from what I understand, ancient Romans believed that in order to become creative, we had to somehow connect with these muses, and we were really just a channel for the muses' work. So, again, let me try to clarify that a bit. I'm sitting down writing something. According to the Romans, that's not me writing. That's me channeling the muses and writing through them, right? Or them writing through me, however you want to see it. So, if we take Steve's example of the muses in Rome, and we make it a little more practical, still seeing ourselves as a channel for creativity. The only way we're going to be harnessing that energy required to channel something is by actually doing said activity. So, if you want to channel the ability to write, and you don't even have to think it's coming from an outside source, you can think it's coming from you, it's really irrelevant here. I'm just saying, if you want to channel the ability to write creatively or write in any way, you better be writing. If you're sitting down watching TV, obviously you're not channeling any ability to write there. It's common sense, right? So, a huge tip for you guys who are experiencing writer block, it's something I do personally, is just start writing anything that comes to head. There's a common mistake I see a lot of students make when they're trying to write an assignment, and it's that they have an idea in their head, or they can say it out loud, and they have no idea how to put it into words, and they're searching for the perfect way to do that. That's a huge mistake. Instead, take whatever you have in your head, take whatever's coming out of your mouth, and put it on words right away. It doesn't matter how it freaking sounds the first time. It really doesn't. You'll see why in step 3. So my strategy for step 2 is, again, just start writing, start doing something. Whether you believe you're channeling an outside source or an inner source, it's not going to happen unless you start doing said activity. And we could even apply this to more than writing. But again, in the case of writer's block, if you want to deal with writer's block, start writing anything that comes to mind, no matter how irrelevant or relevant you think it will be. You can work on that after. So that's my second strategy for writer's block. Just start writing. Alright guys, strategy number 3 for how I deal with writer's block is understanding that good writing is rewriting. It's something my dad told me. I don't know where he got it from. Always attribute it to my dad though. So what that means is we got to see writing as something that takes a lot of time. Coming back to step 1, don't procrastinate. You're not helping yourself there. Step 2, I told you guys, write whatever the hell comes to your mind or your mouth down. Put it down on paper. It's only going to help you. Now with step 3, what we've got to understand is that what we wrote in step 2 obviously might not all be good. So usually what happens in my case is, let's say I wrote 3 paragraphs down using my step 2 strategy because I just felt like I was being hit with writer's block, so I wrote whatever came to mind. I will come back to those same 3 paragraphs the next day, reread them with a fresh perspective, a new mind, whatever, maybe not a new mind, a mind that slept the night before, and I'll start rewriting them. And sometimes how it works out is what I wrote down the night before that I thought wasn't any good, actually I use a lot of it and I'm just making minor adjustments. So with this part of the strategy, again, what it's really forcing you to do is to see writing as a long process. It's not something you're going to accomplish in just a couple hours. So yeah guys, that's my strategy number 3. Good writing is rewriting. Alright guys, so just want to give you a quick recap of the 3 strategies that I talked about. Strategy number 1 is don't procrastinate. Give yourself a lot of time to work. Fully understanding that no matter how big or small the time frame you're working within, at least probably half of it is going to be affected by writer's block. If it's less than half, good for you, but I would say most people, half the time they work on something is spent in writer's block mode. Secondly, once you're in that writer's block mode, start writing anything. It doesn't matter what you're writing, honestly. Sometimes I write stuff that I have no idea why I'm writing it, and I just do. If we go to step 3, I look at what I wrote the next day. So again, giving yourself the time to rework on things. Good writing is rewriting. I'm here the next day, I look at what I wrote in step 2, I only like half of it. I read through that half that I like, I work with it, I build something out of it, boom, I'm out of writer's block. I just finished another 3 pages out of nowhere. Give myself another day, come back. Give yourself the time, guys. Approach writing as something that needs to be re-looked at and reanalyzed often, and write whatever comes to mind, thinking of channeling whatever's in you or whatever's out of you, whatever you believe in, it doesn't matter. And I promise you, you guys will deal with writer's block fine.
What are you laughing at?
There's a wasp on me.